What if you could lead more effectively and go home on time? Welcome to the Lightbulb. I'm Zoe Thompson, leadership and performance coach, and each week I bring you 3 practical insights from my work helping impact-driven leaders transform from reactive to intentional leadership so they can finish work on time and take guilt-free time off, creating success that feels as good as it looks. Let's jump in. Hey folks, welcome back. Episode 11 and the final episode of 2025. Although I'm thinking to do an overall one, just to round it up to number 12. Don't like ending things on an odd number. But for now, let's just focus on today's episode and my light bulbs from my last working week with clients this year. And yeah, it's been a crazy year, which is where I think I probably need to do a separate one for a reflection on the year. We've had some really good sessions to finish up this year. And it's really interesting in being part of sessions with clients where they've been reflecting on the year, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what do they want out of the next 12 months and how that's coming through in what they bring to the sessions. Let's get into my 3 light bulbs from this last week of 2025. So first one, our self-worth at work. Now, this links into our identity, which you will now be familiar with, part of my PIPS framework. Identity is so important, how we see ourselves in work, how that links into how we see ourselves in our entire being. So important. And when we step into leadership, and especially when we progress in leadership, we have to shift how we see ourselves. And what we don't want to do is change our core identity to adapt into our leadership roles. We want our leadership role to adapt with who we are and how we see ourselves. So this has come up in a couple of ways this week. And I do think that's part of the reflection process. When we think back on what we've achieved, we look back at who we are, who we've been, how we've evolved, how we've grown over the year, and recognizing actually sometimes our self-worth can create issues, both positive and negative. Can there be positive issues? But I think it can impact us in different ways. So what we looked at this week is how we tie ourselves and our self-worth into our work. And often that can mean that we struggle to maintain boundaries because of how we link our self-worth to the value that we provide. When we connect our identity and the value that we provide and our self-worth with our contribution and our significance, and we tie that into being very hands-on and being a problem solver, that in leadership can be a real issue. So as I said, this has come up with a couple of people this week, and linking the difficulty maintaining boundaries because of our identity to being the helpful person, being the supportive person, being the problem solver, but also that question of what would we do if we didn't work. And as somebody who's gone through redundancy, that's the bit that hit me hardest. Who am I if I'm not 8952 Thompson? Who am I if I'm not in this leadership position? Who am I when nobody wants anything from me, when I don't have that role to fulfill? What would we do if we didn't work? So sometimes we have to recognize how much work fills our life. And actually, if we were to put this into a big pie chart, how big of a slice of the pie do we want our work to be? And if work is becoming all-consuming, how do we start to shift that? How do we start to shape that identity that shows that we are more than just a leader? We are more than just a business owner. We are more than just a partner. We are more than just a parent. When we look at that pie chart of how we see ourselves, the roles that we have, who we are as a person, how much do we realistically want work to be? And if work is becoming all-consuming, then we need to challenge that. And it's not just about reducing work. We need something to fill the gap too, right? We need to have something that we can also be. We can't just take a slice of pie out of the pie chart. We need a new slice of pie to go in there. So thinking about 2026 is a great time of year to ask yourself this question: how do you want that pie chart to look next year? How has it been this year? How do you want it to look in this next 12 months? It's the difference between I do this work and I am this work. Now, I'm very passionate about what I do, but actually I can be passionate about that and have that imbalance. I can be really bloody good at what I do, but still boundary that to make sure that I have other things in life that are important to me. My self-worth exists outside of my workplace and outside of the work that I do. And we want to make sure that we're prioritizing what is most important. Legacy is important. The work that we do is very, very important, but also who we are and how we contribute to life and other people's lives around us is also very important. So think about that pie chart for you this year. What does it look like? And what do you want that to look like next year? And if you're going to decrease the slice of pie that is work, what are you adding and what are you increasing with those other slices? So the big question is, if you couldn't work tomorrow, who would you be? And if that question terrifies you, your self-worth isn't just connected to work, it is work. And that's why every boundary is failing. That's why every attempt to make changes isn't sticking. And it's why burnout is inevitable, because you're going to resent the thing that is fulfilling your self-worth. You will start to resent it. And that's where burnout comes in, because you're out of alignment with what's important. You're out of alignment with how you want that balance to be. And that's what happens when your identity becomes your job title. That's a tough light bulb to start with, but I think it's really important. And I think with this time of year is a great question to ask. Okay, light bulb 2. What culture are you creating with your team? Now, this is going to come up in lots of episodes because it comes up all the time, because as leaders, as business owners, we have a huge influence in how we shape the culture of our teams. And so it's going to come up because it comes up with clients. We're going to come up with it in different angles, different perspectives. I want you to think about why your team are behaving the way that they do, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I want you to think about how you are influencing that. So you can't control it, and there will be certain things that you can influence and certain things that are more challenging. But what are you allowing? What are you encouraging? What are you letting go? That's all shaping the culture of your team. So if there are certain behaviors that you are not liking, you need to think about how you are influencing that, because culture isn't what you say, it's what you allow. It's what you let go, what you don't challenge, and what you encourage. So if there are certain behaviors coming from your team, you need to reflect how you are influencing that from your position of influence. So whether that's their behavior towards each other, whether that's their behavior towards you, whether that's them coming in and running everything by you, asking you lots of questions, not taking ownership, not taking responsibility, whether that's inappropriate behavior sometimes. There will be lots of different behaviors coming from your team. It will be shaping that team dynamic. It will be shaping your culture of your team. Your workplace culture is influenced by the individual behaviors and attitudes. It's really important that you think about how you are influencing that. You can't change culture from within that dysfunction. You have to step back. You have to think about how you want to shape and influence the culture that you have. What do you want the culture to look like? That's your starting point. Then you can think about the habits and behaviors that collectively will help to shape that culture. And then you can think about how you will influence that as a leader. What will you challenge? What will you encourage? How will you create that space? So your leadership modeling is a huge part of that. And that will include how you show up, how you behave, how you present yourself to your team. The culture you have is the culture you've allowed. And I know that's really difficult to hear and appreciate. If you've just taken over your team, that might not be the case. But if you've been with your team a little while, culture you have is the culture you've allowed. Your role as a leader, your role as a business owner is to challenge that, to influence it, and to shape it. So if you're frustrated by the culture that you have by your team, if you're frustrated by the behaviors of your team, ask yourself that question. What have you been allowing that has created this? Culture isn't what you want, it's what you tolerate. And if the culture is not what you want, then you have to take that step back and ask yourself, how have you contributed to that? What have you enabled? What have you allowed? And most importantly, what needs to be different to move this forward and to shape the culture that you do want? These are all learned behaviors. So it's absolutely achievable to set goals around changing the culture over the next 12 months. But it will require clarity on what it is that you want, clarity on what that looks like. You're going to need to be able to communicate that effectively, make sure that your teams are understanding of what behaviors you want to see, not what you don't want to see, what you do want to see instead. And then you need to be consistent with how you show up and how you encourage it and challenge it as the year goes on. I feel like this is a tough one this week. These are 3 tough light bulbs, but I think this is what is coming through because people are reflecting on the 12 months and they want to shift things. They want to turn things around. And this is really highlighted in my 3rd light bulb of this week. Coming up in client sessions, one-to-one sessions, recognizing that the same things coming up and change is not happening. That whole once and for all, I want to shift this, I want to change this, I need to make this change, and then actually doing it. This is why reflection is so important. And I say that as somebody who can be very quick to take action and not spend the time reflecting. The lessons that we learn are in those reflections. We need to spend some time reflecting. We need to spend some time having honest conversations with ourselves. We have to do that. We can't shift to the action unless we truly understand what the problem is and why it needs to change. Thinking about the behaviors or situation that you need to change over the next 12 months. Think about the intention behind it. So we can use the PIPS model for this. You need to have a plan. You need to have a plan of what you want to change. You need to be very specific about what that needs to look like. Then you need to understand the intention behind it. Why are you doing this? Why is this important? What's your compelling purpose? What's your compelling reason to make that change? Who is impacted by the change? How are they impacted? And also, what's the risk of not changing? There'll be lots of benefits of making that change. I also want you to think about the risk if you don't change. What are you risking losing? And are you really willing to risk that? So we need to be very clear on the intention. We need to be very clear on the plan. So then we need to think about our identity. Who do we need to be to make this happen? What do we need to believe is true? What values do we need to have? What needs do we need to fulfill? How do we need to see ourselves? What behaviors need to be different? What habits need to be different? Then we can think about performance. What do we need to be consistent with? What do we need to change? And then we can get really clear on those behaviors and that routine that's going to create that environment for us to be able to make this change sustainable and therefore permanent, or at least semi-permanent. And then we need to think about the structure that holds all of those things together. We need to accept and acknowledge what we are ready to let go of. And that might have been huge for us in the past. That might be a real positive for us in the past. We're recognizing that things have changed, situation has changed, environment has changed, we have changed, and now we're ready to let go of that. We're ready to let go of who we've been so that we can step into who we want to become and what that looks like. And in our leadership positions, in our positions as a business owner, there will be the things that got us here, but they're not going to get us to where we want to go. So if you have found this year you've been committing to the same change and you have not yet made that change, I want you to ask yourself, what is it you're holding on to? What is the fear of letting go? And it might be like grieving. We grieve the identity of who we've been because, especially when we've grown to love that person too, and we love who that person is and we love how they are, stepping into that next chapter, that next evolution, we have to let go of that and we have to mourn who we've become so that we can become who we choose to be, who we need to be, who we want to be. So we have to question that. So if you're committing to the same change, are there elements of that actually you don't want to change? That's where you need to sit down and have that honest conversation with yourself. If I'm not changing, what is it that I'm not ready to let go of? And why am I not ready to let go of that yet? Because that's often the challenge. We're holding on to something from the past because our brain is trying to do what it does and it's trying to hold on to what it thinks is working, even when what we're moving into, that's not going to work. It's an old operating model that we're trying to hold on to because we know it works, even though we're moving into a new situation, which we recognize needs a new operating model and a new identity. So it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable when we recognize that why are things not changing? It's down to us. We are the problem, which also means we are the solution, which can be a good thing. If you have found this year change around a specific behavior or a specific part of your life has been difficult, just sit down and ask yourself, what are you struggling to let go of? What's holding you in that space? And what needs to shift? What do you need to believe is true for you to let that go? And if I can help with that, please do feel free, as always, to reach out if you've got a question or if there's something that you think I can help you with. Please do feel free to reach out and ask. I'm always here to help. Okay, those are my 3 for this week. I am going to do a reflection for the year. I'm going to do that sometime over this Christmas and New Year period. Be nice to end the year on 12 episodes. Nice round number. But for now, that is my 3 light bulbs for this last working week of 2025. It has been a year for me. It's been a huge year. But I am very, very happy about where I am ending this year and beginning 2026. I hope that you are too. And I hope that the questions and my light bulbs from this last working week are helpful and of value to you too. And for now, I'm going to wish you a wonderful Christmas if you are celebrating. If not, enjoy the holiday season. And to all of you, I'm going to wish you a happy new year too. And all the best for 2026. And those are your 3 takeaways for this week. Before you go, ask yourself, what's my light bulb moment from this? And now that I know what I know, what will I do differently? Choose one action, however small, and commit to it. That's how overwhelmed and reactive becomes aligned and intentional. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of The Lightbulb.